For this quick little demo, I am going to show you how to draw a basic grid in 2-point perspective by utilizing the technique that I call one block at a time. Before we get started, we need to first, like with all perspective drawings, we need to establish our horizon line. So that's what I'm going to do first. I've got my T-square, I've got my sheet of paper, and I'm just going to go ahead and draw a horizon line right there. 2/3 of the way of the paper. My plane of vision is going to be within this area right here. So that's where I'm going to get started. The second thing we need to figure out is where we put our two vanishing points. This is 2-point perspective. In my book, I talk more specifically about how to do this, but very quickly it's based upon a standing position, and your standing position is along your center of vision, so very light line, which represents my center of vision. And I'm going to put my standing position somewhere around here. Now on my standing position, I can take my right angle and put it against that standing position. I could rock my right angle back and forth, and that tells me where my two vanishing points need to go. What this actually represents is the orientation of my squared objects as they sit in front of me. I can actually rotate my triangle to be in precisely the exact same orientation of those objects. So once I've done that, now I need to find one more point. This point is the diagonal measuring point. In order to find the diagonal measuring point, I'm going to draw a line very lightly from one of my vanishing points to my standing position. Then I'm going to take my 45-degree angle, put it against that line that I've drawn, and then put the other corner against that standing position, and where it intersects the horizon line is the 45-degree bisection of that right angle. And what that gives me is this gives me a 45-degree measuring point. Every square has this 45-degree angle that cuts across it, and what that gives us is it gives us a perfect square. The purpose for doing grids in any kind of perspective is twofold. Number one, to find diminishing intervals as they go off into space, that's obvious. But number two is to find that perfect square. Also know that all parallel lines go to the same vanishing point. So this perfect square has the exact same 45 degrees as this perfect square, and these lines being parallel to each other will go to the same vanishing point. So that's what gives us this point right there. All right, so enough explanation about the point. I go in a lot more detail in my book. Let's go ahead and get started with our grid. So pick anywhere on your ground plane where you want to start it. I like to start my grids where it associates with anything that I'm drawing. So like the start of a hallway or a room or something like that. Just because I like my grids to line up with whatever it is I'm drawing. So we don't have anything right now. I'll just kind of arbitrarily put a point right there to represent the start of my grid. And from that point, and from every point in 2-point perspective, you connect first to one vanishing point and then to the other vanishing point. So this is going to provide me the outer parameters of my gridded area. Now I have to figure out how big I want my first row to be. So I want my first row maybe to be that big. So I'll make another point, and it's already going to that vanishing point, so I just need to finish it off by connecting it to this vanishing point, like that. Now in order to find that first perfect square, remember that diagonal measuring point we created? We connect this corner, which represents that corner right there, to that point, which is the vanishing point for this line right there, and that will tell us how to square off our first square. So I am actually going to do this in a different color because I don't want my diagonal measuring lines to get confused with my grid work. So just go really lightly with this blue right here. So then that provides for me the first diagonal measuring line, and where it intersects this point right here, I can take that all the way back to the vanishing point on the other side. Ta-da! We have a square. Now this is called grading in 2.1 block at a time. So obviously we need to continue on. So how do we do that? Well, we've got to find a perfect square going this way. We've got to find a perfect square going that way. And how do we do that? Once again, back to this lovely diagonal measuring point. So there it is. So grab my blue pencil again. And again, very lightly, back to that point right there. And you'll notice that you get an intersection. When you do grids, You want to be looking for those intersections because those are usually places where you can then start measuring your grid out. All along that intersection, I'm going to go back to this point right here. And as I do that, lo and behold, I get another intersection. So now I can go back this way. And wouldn't you know it, I get another intersection. And I think you can kind of sense a pattern that's going to happen here. I can start building this grid out one block at a time, step by step. And now I've got a grid that's 3 rows by 2 rows. But if I just draw this line one more time, then I'll have a grid that's 3 rows by 3 rows, and 3 rows by 4 rows, and etc., etc. And I could just keep on gridding as far off into the distance that I care to grid. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned a lot. Once again, I do invite you to check out my GoFundMe page for the book that I'm writing. We're going to have a lot more details about everything I just talked about.